Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello, my dear friends and students. In this video, I want to talk about the cycles of business activity. First of all, what do you mean by cycle of business activity? We call the cycle of business activity in this way: the series of activities which are involved in a business is called cycle of business activities. Cycle of business activity simply means how many types of activities we have in the business. So several activities that we have in the business can be called the cycle of business activity. Generally, the cycle of business activities are divided into four types. These are the common types, but we may have some more types for some business, or we may have some less or lesser than this for some organizations. What are the types? For example, the first one is capital investment or financial cycle, one of the cycle. Second cycle is sales or revenue cycle. Next one is conversion or revenue cycle, and the last one is input acquisition or expenditure cycle. Or you can go in this way as well. So this might be the first one, the second one, the third one, and fourth one, doesn't matter. But these are the source of activities for the organizations. It means the business activities comes from this source in the organization. So any kinds of activities that you can see in the business, and for that you want to record or you want to provide the accounting information, is basically from this one. Either this transaction is from the capital, either this transaction is from the sales, from the acquisition or expenditure, or otherwise the transactions might be from the conversion cycle. Now let us look through each of them one by one. For example, the first one is the capital investment or financial cycle. Definitely in the part of finance, we have several activities. For example, we take a loan, for example, from the market. We invest our own money in the business, right? Or otherwise, for example, in the case of giant stock companies, we have to sell bonds in the market. We have to sell shares in the market. All those activities, buying of shares, selling of shares, taking of loan, repayment of loan, dividing the profit, for example, receiving the interest, paying off interest, all of this can be called the financial cycle, or we can say financial transactions. And remember that in all of these financial cycles, not only in the financial cycle, but all of them, but especially in the financial cycle, we have to follow the generally accepted accounting principles as well, right? So in financial cycle, of course, as I said before, so usually source of fund come from two sides. Either the owner provide or either the creditor provide. So even if owner provide or creditor provide, so we have the same sort of activities in the business that we have to record in the book of account. We have to repay that one, we have to provide dividend, or we have to provide interest, and so on. So this was what regarding the financial cycle. So I didn't want to talk much in deep regarding financial cycle because it's a kind of finance topics. But for the time being, why I want to say that several activities come from this cycle in the business, and those activities are this one basically: raising of fund and repayment of fund. For example, making the profit and of course distribution of the profit, taking loan from the banks, repayment of loan to banks. All those parts are belong to financial cycle of the business. Second cycle in the business, which are much deep, is the input acquisition or expenditure cycle. Let me go in this way. This is the second activity in the business cycle, which is concerned with the acquisition of materials required for the increase of capital of the business. The input acquisitions are different for different organizations. Second step is a step of acquisition basically. So we have to acquire. You may acquire, for example, the fixed asset for the business, or you may acquire, for example, the raw materials. Especially we focus on the raw materials. Why? Because fixed assets are one time or non-recurring in nature, but the raw materials are of course the recurring in nature. So every time we purchase the raw materials for continuing operation of the business. So for that purpose, we have to go in deep about the acquisition cycle. Although it is different for different organizations, but there are a common standards that these standards should be followed while doing the expenditure cycle. Expenditure cycle is steps and documents. Basically, these are the common, but I am not saying that this is for the whole organizations. Depends on the nature of the organizations, on size of the organizations, whether it's profit-making organization, it is non-profit making organizations. The expenditure cycle might be different, but these are just a common points that, of course, might be available in the case of each business or organization. What are the points? Let me show you. These are the points. In order to go for the expenditure cycle, point number one is, of course, we have to go for purchase requisition. What is purchase requisition? Basically, it is explained in the next slides, but I'm not going to go for those slides. I want to explain from here itself, but you guys can go for the next slide and read the what's purchase requisition. So I want to explain what's purchase requisition. Purchase requisition is a request from other departments to the purchase department to purchase a particular product. What do you mean by this one? Suppose we can say HR department need a printer. So they fill a form and submit the form to the purchase department to please purchase a printer for us. Let us take, for example, IT department need a computer, right? So they make a request to the purchase department to please purchase the following items. Or for example, we can say a store department or production department, right? So they need a particular raw materials. They fill a purchase requisition form and head of department should sign it, of course. You should not forget this point. Head of department sign or the responsible person of the department sign it and of course submit it to the purchase department or procurement department and they will go for the purchase of that and they will take care of this. So this was the purchase requisition. So we have to request for the purchase, please purchase the following items for us. After purchase requisition, the next step is of course inviting tenders. When the purchase department receive the purchase requisition from the other departments, the next step of course they have to go for inviting tenders. They have to invite quotations from the suppliers, for example. So there might be three suppliers, supplier A, supplier B, and supplier C. So our department should receive quotation from A, quotation from B, and quotation from C, and check that which one is good for us. So this was the second step, that we have to invite different supplier that how they can supply for us, how much they will supply us, right? How much they will charge it, whether they receive right now or whether they receive in the future. It's a credit transaction, it's a cash transaction, which type of transaction they want to deal with us, whether they want to deliver the goods in January, they want to deliver goods in February. So when they can deliver the good for us. So for this purpose, we ask from the suppliers. Okay. After this one, when we receive the quotation from different supplier, then we check that which one is good for us. Any supplier which looks suitable for us, we select that one. And of course, it depends. It might be depend on price of the products. For example, there are three suppliers, supplier A, B, C. Supplier C may charge lesser than everyone, so we may select supplier C. Or it might be based on the quality, for example. So we may not select, for example, supplier C, but instead of that, we may select supplier A, for example. Why? Because they provide a good quality of the product. And of course, it might be based on, for example, some other factors like whether they sell us on cash basis, sell on credit basis. So we select the supplier based on that one. After selecting the supplier, we go for purchase order. We order them to please send us the following materials. I have accepted your quotation. You are a good supplier, for example, so please supply the following items. We make a request from whom? From the supplier, or we can say the seller. After, when we made a purchase request for that, suppose they send goods to us. When we receive the goods from them, so especially the store department, when the store department receive goods from the supplier, so they have to check the goods, whether the goods which we received are as per the order or not. When it is as per the order, of course, they have to uh, whether it's as per the order or not, they have to make a report, which is called receiving report. So the receiving report is of course usually checked or usually prepared by the store department or the department who received the goods. So step one, request. Step two, invite the people to please apply. The next you have to select them. The next you have to purchase, and of course after that you have to receive the goods and provide a report. After receiving the goods, we have to go for voucher system. Voucher simply means the documents or evidence. So before to enter the data or before to enter the invoice or we can set the bill into the system, first of all there should be a verification system, right? It means before to enter the documents or the invoice into the system of the organization, first of all everything should be properly checked, whether the goods which we received is as per our order or not, whether it's a good quality or not, how much they have charged, whether the price which they have charged is as per the invoice or as per the quotation or not. If everything is fine, then file a document or file for them in the system. Make a file for that supplier in the system. After that, of course, go for the invoice verification. A single supplier may have several invoices, for example. Suppose Ahmad is our supplier, he may has one, two, three, four, and five, suppose 100 we can say invoices. So each time when we receive the invoice from them, so we have to verify it. If there is any payment, so we have to verify a particular invoice and then we have to go for the step of payments. So these are the steps for what? Purchase of a particular product. So purchase request is from inside the department to please purchase the following. Then we invite the people or the tenders, or we take quotation from the supplier. Then we select some of them. Then we purchase order from them. Then we receive the report. Then we provide a voucher or documents. Then we go for the verification, and of course we make the payments. So all of them will be discussed in the QuickBook in deep, and of course you will see the format of each of them. Format of this one, this one, this one, all of them will be discussed. Although it is explained for you in this next upcoming slides, so you can go for those slides. I'm not going to explain this part, right? Purchase order, receiving reports, voucher files, verifications, and so on. It is mentioned. Now I'm going to go for procurement cycle by USD. That was a kinds of procurement documents that we need, but this is a kinds of example, extra information for you guys as a for example procurement documents or procurement cycle which are used by some organization. As I said before, most of the organizations, of course, they do not follow the same cycle for their procurements, whether it's a profit or non-profit, whether it's a government, non-government, so they may have their own procurement cycle. This is one of the cycle which is much accurate and of course enforceable, and it is used by USD, USAID. So when they use such kinds of procurement cycle, so we have to go for them and let's check that which documents they use for their procurement cycle. Basically, these are the steps for their procurement cycles. Stuff for purchase requisition, then of course quotations, then quotation evaluation, and so on. And instead of reading all of this, now let us discuss each one by one. Step number one, purchase requisition form. So it was the same as we discussed before. So the purchase department or procurement department receive a request from the inside departments that please purchase this one, right? So when any department needs something, so they have to fill a form which is called purchase requisition form, PRF. And in that one, so of course they have to mention what they need, how many items they need, right? So the quality of that one, the grade, if there is the grade is required, if the skill is required, if the name, for example, if the brand is required, everything is required. If the timing is also possible, to please mention the time also when they need a particular product. So all of them should be mentioned in the purchase requisition form. After purchase requisition form, of course, like the previous step as we said, there should be a request for quotations or inviting tenders is the same. So the purchase department should invite the quotation from the suppliers. These are different names. So RFP, for example, request for proposal, or RFQ, request for quotation, for example, or ITB, for example, invitation to bid, right? So we have to ask from different supplier that please, if you want to provide the following materials for us, so please give your quotation for us. So this is the things. Quotation distribution can be in two methods. One simply can be, for example, hand distribution or hard copy of the quotation, which we usually take from the shopkeepers in the shops and all. And the second one can be advertisement through website, newspapers, and so on. So two methods of distribution of quotations. Two types of quotation we have basically. One type of quotation is written quotation, which is an official letter, head, and emails. Officially, we make a request, so please, so provide your quotations, and they officially provide us a quotation. And second one is, of course, we take quotation through telephones, for example, mobiles and so on, and they provide the information for us. Remember that in the quotations, of course, we have to check the price, we have to check the timing, when, how much they charge, which quality of the product, when they want to provide for us, right? So when they want to receive the money, right? So can they deliver for us or not? All this sort of information should be asked at the time of taking quotation. After receiving quotation, we have to go for evaluation of quotation or quotation evaluation. The thing which is used by USD, so USAID. So these are basically USAID. So these are the steps which are followed by that one. So it means they do this one. Number one, they receive quotation, then invite quotations. After receiving the quotations, of course, they evaluate the quotations. They evaluate the quotation basically on two bases. These are the way of evaluation of the suppliers or the sellers by the user. So this is one of the methods. LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable. So they may select the supplier who supplied the product at the lower cost. Point number one. Point number two is trade-off. Trade-off means, of course, not only the cost, several other aspects might be considered. For example, the quality might be considered, the security might be considered. For example, the delivery method might be considered, the timing of the method of payment might be considered, the past background of supplier, and several other aspects might be considered in this one, and then they evaluate your quotation. After this is step, the next step is vendor screening or vendor verifications. So this is basically the checking the background of the supplier, whether they have a good background or not, right? So if anyone who want to be the supplier with the US embassy, for example, at least they have to go for a few months, and they will check the background of the supplier, whether there is no any crime behind this one, whether he is not involved, for example, any frauds, whether there's a proper clearance for this one or not, whether the company have a proper license or not. Everything of the supplier will be checked before to go for any order. After that, when they find that the supplier is fine, there's no problem with them, they may go for the next step, which is the step of negotiation. So even the quotation may not be, for example, acceptable, so they may still negotiate. They may negotiate the price, they may negotiate, for example, the time, the contract duration, the delivery period, and of course the payment as well, whether payment is on cash or whether payment is on credit, if there is any discounts and so on. Everything should be provided at this time, right? So they will discuss. And after that, they will go for the step of award or contract stage. So now we are ready, or the USAID is ready to make a contract with the supplier after checking or after proper negotiation or bidding, basically. Types of procurement award. The procurement award or their award is divided into three parts. One part is PO, or the first part, purchase order. Second part is BPA, blanket purchase order, or also we can call it IDIQ. IDIQ means indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. So we will explain it what do you mean by this one. The first one is purchase order. What is purchase order? It is the legal contract between buyer and vendors. So If everything is fine, the USAID may directly order, for example, please provide us the following documents. Please provide us the following materials as per the quotations, or as per, we can say, the bidding which we had, or the negotiation which we had, right? So usually the following things appear in the purchase order: quantity which we want to purchase, products or the service which we need, specific brands, for example, if we need, price per unit, for example, delivery date is needed, the delivery location where they want to deliver, billing address, payment terms, and so on. All of them will be mentioned in the purchase contract, and we make them purchase order. We give them order to please provide us the following documents within this particular period of time or date. The second type of contract which they want to make us is this one: BAP, blanket purchase agreement. Blanket purchase agreement is this one. A blanket purchase agreement is a simplified method of filing anticipated repetitive needs for supply or service by establishing charge accounts with a qualified contractor. See, in this case, it is not one time, we can say, purchase order. In this type of order, we make a contract with a qualified supplier, and we order them each time when we need a particular product. For that one, for example, we create an account, and anytime if they send for us, so they have to directly record in our account, right? So so we can say it's a kind of a repetitive purchase order. Instead of one time purchase order, if we repeatedly need a particular product, so no need to go for all those steps again and again. Make such kinds of contract and repeatedly order it. When we can do this one, if a contractor is a, we can say, qualified person, we can trust on them. It means the USAID trust on the supplier. So on the other case, there is no need again and again to check their backgrounds and so on. Once the contract is made, so repeatedly they can supply for us. So what comes on BPA? So terms and conditions, delivery methods, payment methods, and so on. So all of this will be discussed in the quick book as well. So this was the second. And this is a kind of example which I've given, for example, from Afghan wireless network. So one of the scheme for the internet is pay as you go, right? So no need, for example, for charging the bundles. So you just will be charged based on your usage. So this contract is also like that: BAP contract, or blanket purchase agreement, or indefinite quantity for indefinite delivery, and indefinite quantity is basically for this purpose. So no need for the specific product, for a specific amount. So we just made a contract, then you can use for any amount as you wish. Pay as you go is a kind of scheme or internet scheme which is provided by the Afghan wireless network. So the subscriber can use the data as much as and can pay for the data as much as they use it. And the last one is of course the contract. What is contract? A contract is basically an agreement between the two parties, creating a legal obligation for both of them to perform a specific act. Each party is legally bound to perform the specific duties, such as rendering a payment or delivering a goods. In order for a contract to be enforceable, each party must exchange something of value. It means consideration, right? So the next type is, of course, the contract. So two party make an agreement that each should do something for each other against some consideration. So what comes in the contract? Quantity purchased, the product or the service being purchased, a specific brand name, and so on, like what? Like the contract, like the purchase order. So this is, of course, also one of the method of purchase which they have. The next step is, of course, the good or the service delivery form. GRN, good received note, or SRN, N is mentioned here, service received notes. When they receive the goods, it means they have ordered this from the supplier, and now they have received the goods. When they receive the goods, of course, the store department should provide or should make these reports or this notes. Good received note: if they receive goods, they should provide GRN. If they, for example, receive the service, then they have to provide this one, service receipt notes. Also, we can call it, for example, this one, GRIF, good received inspection form. Or if this received the service received inspection form. Also, we can call it GRN, good received note, service received note. Or instead of good received note, you can find them, for example, this one, good received inspection form, or service received inspection form. It means when we receive the goods from the supplier, so we have to check it, we have to inspect it properly. After inspection, so we have to provide the report that whether the goods are as per our order or not. The next one is a scope of insurance guarantee or warranty. So the USAID will check that whether the supplier can provide us some kinds of guarantee or warranty or not, right? So especially for some products, they need some types of, we can say, insurance, some types of warranty and guarantee, especially for some softwares and so on, basically. So if it is so if something happened to your product, can you help us or not? If there is any guarantee or not. So these things also should be checked. And the next or the ninth step is the payment request form. So when everything is properly done and everything is fine, then there is a request to please make the payment for the contract. And the last step is basically closing out phase. So the procurement department will close the contract by informing the vendor or issuing a termination memorandum. So these were the 10 steps that is used basically by uh, USAID, right? So this was an example of procurement cycle by the USAID. So please take care of all of this, right? Purchase request, then quotations, then evaluation of quotation, then checking the supplier, negotiation, then contract, then receiving the goods, checking the insurance, making the payments, and finally the closing out of this one. So I'm going to stop here. So please, in order to have more videos, so please go to our YouTube channel by the name of Muhibbul Zamani, and you will receive the rest of the videos, inshallah.